Good morning, everyone. It's 9 o'clock. You are in the Senate Education Committee, and if you would please rise to the pledge, I'm going to have Senator Fenton lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, we're opening the hearing, and the first one is House Bill 530. And I'm assuming that Representative Blatt will introduce the bill instead of Representative Cordelli.
Good assumption. Thank you very much, Madam Chairman and members of the Senate Education Committee. For the record, my name is Rick Ladd. I chair House Education. I'm here to present this bill, HB 530. I'm kind of winging it because I'm here for Representative Cordelli, who had to leave on emergency leave to see his daughter down in Texas, who's having an emergency operation today. So with that, I'll kind of wade through this a little bit. This is a bill which deals with withdrawing from cooperative school districts, and we know we have 30 or so cooperative school districts in this state. And as chair of education, I have experienced so many bills dealing with how do we get out of a cooperative school district in the last years here, dissolution, and then looking at articles of agreement and everything associated with the cooperative school districts. And this year we had 530 come to us. In the past, we've had bills like HB 1679 come to us, which was trying to dissolve it all together and start over. For those districts that are having a difficult time within a cooperative school district, and it could be for many, many different reasons, and that's what this bill is trying to address. How do we support those particular communities? Since they came in effect back in 1963 and through the latter part of the 60s, the co-ops have really changed. Demographics have changed, population of students have changed, value of property has changed, and some districts now are living with articles of agreement which were set up in the 60s that are now impacting their changes and as they stand today. And that's very difficult. It puts some districts in a place where they may have lost a lot of population or lost property values or whatever, and they are now paying higher tuition rates to the cooperative. And they're saying, well, we want our children to have a good academic experience, but we just can't afford to do it where we're doing it. There are a host of reasons why various communities may want to get out of a cooperative. Leaving a cooperative is a real difficult process to follow. If you look at the law there, you have to review or do a feasibility plan, sustainability of the process. School board may send two competing reports of the cooperative to the State Board of Education for resolve, one advocating withdrawal, one arguing against that. The state board then decides which report to accept. If a state board accepts, then the withdrawal plan goes forward before the town voters. Residents in all towns have to vote on that plan. Now we have situations, though, where we have some individual districts. How do we help them? And that's what this bill is all about. It has about 3 or 4 steps in which one can take. If a small district, let's say A within A, B, C, D districts in a cooperative school district, A wants out. If they at their local meeting, town meeting, school board meeting, annual meeting, decide there's a majority of voters saying, yes, we'd like to get out. And also if there's an article on the warrant for the entire cooperative and they say yes as well, then that's good. That plan moves forward. But if it doesn't, if the majority of the cooperative says no, then the next step would be that you have a majority of voters in the pre-existing vote yes, and a majority of the voters present and voting in the entire districts vote yes, you're good. But then we have this other process. This next step is the 3/5 majority, which this bill addresses. If in fact the voters in small district A have a 3/5 majority, of their voters saying, yes, voters present in that pre-existing district, they say, yes, we want to withdraw. And if there's an article within the co-op as a whole, but if the members in the whole, the voters that are present and voting at the whole say no, then it's down. But if they vote yes with a 3/5 supermajority, then the withdrawal process moves forward. That's basically what this bill is about. We thought it would be, it places the bar very, very high to get a 3/5 majority in the individual district and amongst the whole cooperative will be very, very difficult to accomplish. But it is one way to withdraw, and we feel that this is a compromise measure to allow this act to occur. And however, we didn't want to make it so that one could get out just simply based on the votes of the local District A. It has to be contingent upon approval from the whole co-op. So 3/5 supermajority. There's others here that can give you more practical details on this particular bill. I know the School Boards Association was neutral on it, but they helped come up with this solution. So I'd be glad to take any questions if there are some from the committee.
Questions from the committee members? Senator Fenton?
Just a quick one. Thank you for being here, Representative. You said there was quite a few reasons why they would withdraw. Some of them were articles of agreement, loss of population, and paying higher tuition costs. Are there any?
The tax rates are going higher, yes.
Are there any other reasons why they would?
Yeah, there are other reasons why. You know, folks might say, well, we're looking at our children and the academic performance of the children in this co-op at the maybe at another level beyond where they leave your district and they go to the co-op middle or is not what we expect. And we've tried to work with folks and we haven't gotten there and hadn't gotten resolution. We've seen that in several other bills you've addressed just this year. You've seen issues that are up in the town of Carroll, which is trying to get out of that, and that's in your district, Senator. That is, they've had many attempts trying to get out, and I think it's up to 3 times now, and now they're saying, what can we do? We can't afford to see our tuition rate go from $40-something thousand per pupil and jumping maybe to $80,000 based upon if the whole co-ops wants to change the articles of agreement where it's not based on population, maybe to tax base as well. And depending upon where you put that amount, 60-40, 30-70, it makes a big difference for these smaller communities. But the smaller communities oftentimes don't have that vote. They're outvoted. So that's the issue.
Senator Lang?
Thank you. So I make sure I'm clear on a couple things. So I'll use my cooperative district. We have 3 towns. And under this bill, if my town voted by a 3/5 majority to leave, the other 2 towns would have to vote, or cooperative district as a whole would have to vote by a 3/5 to require us to stay.
Yeah, or if they vote
To overturn, in order to overturn our,
yes, that's correct. Yes.
Follow up?
Follow up.
And so this would allow, put the destiny of education for children within a town's control. So if the town of Samberton feels it's no longer beneficial for our students to be a member of the cooperative school district, we want to either tuition out or join with another school district through an anchor school process. It would allow the towns to do that kind of thing and put them in control of the destiny of their own students.
That's correct. It gives them more control. I wouldn't say it gives them total control, seeing that you still have to get that 3/5 majority vote from the whole. That's a very difficult accomplishment, especially if the town you're talking about is in the minority in terms of population.
But this bill at least gives them a path to do that.
It gives them a pathway. That's
Thank you.
correct. Yes.
Any other questions? So
Thank
what
you.
happens if it's a no? Does the district who voted 3/5 to get out, do they have any recourse?
If it's a no, it's done. They're not, according to this law right here, that it would go in effect if this does.
Okay,
Then there's no options for that.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I don't have a list of speakers.
The school board can give you technical support if there's any questions on that.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, do we have anybody in the audience who would like to address this particular bill? HB 530? Seeing none, that closes the hearing on 5:30, and we have to wait until 9:15 for the next bill. Yes.
Just using our 5 minutes we have to have a conversation. The 349, which it had an amendment by Senator Innes. Do we have that amendment? Are we gonna,
The second amendment?
what's that?
The second amendment?
Yeah, the most
I
current.
mean,
one.
I have it.
All right, that's fine. I just want to make sure we had it. If we're going to
Yes.
exec it today, I want to
I
make sure.
asked Aaron to send it out to everybody.
Great, thank you.
You know what? Just want you to know, if I was gonna murder, I would put some in my budget, you know, I get books every, every year.
Well, yeah, on that CT bill, you did get the money put in HB1.
Yep.
That's good.
That's good. That's good.
Okay, everybody, I have 9:15, so we can take up the next bill, which is House Bill 640. And Representative Hobson? I just saw her. There she go. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for allowing me to present HB 640. My name is Deb Hobson, and I'm state representative out of Rockingham 35. Excuse me. I was asked to submit this bill on behalf of the Department of Education. This bill repeals the state's right to recover the cost of vocational rehab services from an individual who receives a third-party settlement or benefit award. The Department of Labor in New Hampshire and things related to workers' compensation have changed drastically over the years. The Departments of Labor in New Hampshire has a small division of VR counselors that work on workers' compensation cases. For reference, the administrative rule can be found in section 281-A:25 for this program. Excuse me. Due to the due to the internal work that happens within the Department of Labor in New Hampshire, the statute language for the state VR program is no longer needed, hence the request for this repeal. The allocation has traditionally been within the Department of Education in New Hampshire because of their strong connection with students with disabilities. During the House Education Committee hearing, the department testified that this statute was missed in a review in 2021, so they're coming back to do this final repeal. Elisa Hatz from the department testified that she was with the department in rehab for 20 years, and this section has never been actually utilized. So when someone has received some kind of workers' compensation settlement on this recovery, the cost for any services has not been used. Vocational rehab has approximately 2,600 customers. Over 50% of these customers are individuals on Social Security benefits. So this community consists of folks without a lot of resources to begin with. So I believe that there'll be testimony from the Department of Ed to explain this a little bit more in detail.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions from Representative Hobson? Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I call on Attorney Fenton? Or who? Anyone from the team? We're gonna talk about this.
Hi, my name's Ella McAllister. I'm the Administrator for Policy and Training at Vocational Rehabilitation. And vocational rehabilitation, as mentioned, works with individuals with disabilities, trying to get them back to work. In the 1980s and 90s, we had a very large collaborative relationship with the Department of Labor, and we worked collaboratively on workers' comp cases. Over the years, the changes in the DOL structure for working with their workers' comp cases, as well as changes in medical resources and technology, have lessened the number of workers' comp cases that even come to our agency. So as the work that we were doing in the late 80s, early 90s, when this legislation was kind of promulgated and actually in force, has changed, and we don't see these cases as often because they're being dealt with in the workers' comp area, both through changes in insurance companies work with the workers' comp folks, as well as DOL work. So repealing this just takes off a requirement that is no longer really needed at this point in time.
Okay. Questions from the committee members? Anyone? I just noticed on the back here that it's, a fiscal note was supposed to be coming, and I haven't seen it. Are you aware, will there be any kind of fiscal ramifications of this change?
No, we have not recovered any dollars as a result of this law for, I think Lisa said, the 20 years.
Okay. So you're repealing something that is no longer in force?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Anybody else who has something to add to this? Seeing none, that ends the hearing on House Bill 640. Now we have to wait until 9:30 for the next bill.
I move we go into executive session.
Second. Aye.
Aye. Move OTP on House Bill 640.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye. Move consent.
Discussion? All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye. That's 5-0. Who wants to take it up? Do you want to do that, Senator Lang?
Sure. I'll always take the consent bills.
It's hurting easier. It's House Bill 364, and the sponsor is Representative Ladd.
Good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the Senate Education Committee. For the record, my name is Rick Ladd. I come from Haverhill, New Hampshire. And I'm here today to speak on one of those topics which I just love to talk about, and it's something I feel that we need to move more into, is career technical education. And this bill that you have before you, 364, deals with transportation reimbursement. As you know, that previously we've always appropriated $9 million per year of the biennium for tuition and transportation for career technical education programs. The way that formula works is we first take out of that $9 million each year the amount of money which we use for transportation. And if that's the districts, they're sending districts and receiving districts. Now, the sending districts, as you see in the sheet that's right below you, it says approximately, we have approximately 9,700 kids, students participating in career technical education, of which 7,800 students are in the same high school that the CTE program is located in. So they're in that regional CTE center already. So the majority of our students that are participating in CTE come from that center right there itself. However, we have another 1,900 students which are transported from sending districts to the regional center in that high school. And of those 1,900 students, 200 of those students are being shipped to Vermont for their CTE programs. We have 5 CTE centers down the Connecticut River, starting with Canaan and going all the way down to Brattleboro. And so we have these sending districts, and what the concern is that we've noticed and heard so much of is that the sending from the sending school to the receiving center, we reimburse from the state 10 cents per mile per pupil. Some of these schools are sending maybe 5, 10 kids, 15 kids on these large school buses that are eating up a lot more fuel than 10 cents per mile. The labor costs are exorbitant as well. And the way we reimburse, it's on per pupil per mile. Right now, that's our reimbursement formula for transportation. And that comes up to roughly around $680,000 annually. So you subtract that $680,000 out of the $9 million, and the remainder is used for tuition. But what's happened in recent years, we've extended that program now to include grades 10, 11, and 12. We've also included transportation within Exeter, Nashua, and Manchester. Prior to our doing that, reimbursement wasn't given to districts when they're transporting within their own district. Now we realize that, for example, in Manchester, from one high school to the receiving center, maybe 4 or 5 miles, but they were never getting reimbursement. Same thing in Exeter and Nashua. So that's been placed into the reimbursement formula we have now as well. We've also changed that formula around in previous years where the state's responsibility is for full cost of transportation. Well, the full cost of transportation is not 10 cents per mile on a yellow school bus from Haverhill, New Hampshire to Bradford, Vermont, where our CTE program is located. So that means the local district has to appropriate those dollars. And what it's also meant is due to that fact, some districts are limiting the number of students which are able to go to the CTE centers simply because the cash isn't there. Now, that's not providing that adequate opportunity for an education for all our students. We should encourage more kids to participate in the CTE program. We know the CTE program puts out students with skills. We know that the average achievement score for students coming out of the CTE is about 5 percentage points higher than our regular high schools. We should encourage more of this rather than keeping it to 9,700 kids out of our population of high school students in any given year. So what this bill does, and you flip to the back side, you'll see something that says Kansas on there. we did a research of how other states are reimbursing for transportation. And we are very unique where we're still doing that old per pupil per mile stuff, 10 cents per mile, or if they happen to travel in their own vehicle, due to the fact it may be cheaper for the school district to have a couple kids travel in their own vehicle at 25 cents per mile reimbursement. And they may even be working after the CTE program, for example, where our students do up in Woodsville. They oftentimes have jobs right there associated with the CTE program in Bradford. So they can't come back on the bus. They're going to be working right there. They take their private vehicle. But looking at what we have here in Kansas, Kansas reimburses by the type of vehicle, the mileage, and the number of trips made. So we're looking at the type of vehicle. It might be a van, which uses less fuel than the big yellow school bus, or it might be some other type of vehicle, which is wise. They also look at the number of trips which occur. And the number of trips costs labor. Each time you put somebody on the bus, it might be another separate trip. You're going to have more labor costs. But we also look at mileage in that formula as well. The total mileage is done for CTE in a given day and in a given school year. So with that, we have given the department authority here. And this bill, by the way, was passed unanimously out of House Education. It was passed unanimously out of Division 2 Finance. The portion which we are needing to raise I'll look at one other thing here. I'm jumping around a little bit. On the front side, right at the bottom of the page, you can see what the actual costs are for transportation. They have not changed much in the last several years. It came out to $11.3 million. And you can see where the costs are. You can see transportation at $680,000. And you can see the tuition costs, and tuition, the state has to pay 75% of the tuition cost. And so when you come down to it, we need another $2.2 million roughly in this budget to make this thing work. House Education through HB1, you will see a recommendation coming to you in the funding budget, costing budget for education, another 2.2 per year of the biennium to make sure that that puts our maintenance of effort with CTEs, not at $9 million per year, but now at $11.2 million per year. And that's where we will have to be in the future. We've changed maintenance of effort before, but not going back for about 6 or 7 years. So what we need to do is we need to allow the department to put this new formula in place. And so this bill actually goes in effect in 2025. So between now and when this bill goes in effect, the department will have the task of looking at a new formula for how we reimburse for transportation costs. And the recommendation from all the committees has been to right now is to do it by way of the way Kansas and so many other states do it. It seems to be more logical, and it pays for the actual costs of the type of vehicle that's being used. I think I went through this fairly quickly here, but if there's any questions of it, I'd be pleased to answer them. We also have the director of CTE here today as well.
Thank you. Questions? Senator General.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Ladd. Just for clarification, so Littleton has a CTE center, and let's say there are 100 students going there now. Those 100 students don't have to take the bus, but are they still reimbursed for taking the bus as if they were transported?
The amount of money we were talking about, that $9 million is currently in, or 11.2 per year of the biennium. That is not for Littleton. That is tuition sending to Littleton and transportation. For example, if you have somebody coming down from Whitefield, or they would be getting that transportation reimbursement, and they would get the tuition reimbursement. The way it works for Littleton, you charge your tuition rate. You establish your tuition rate. You look at your DOE 25 report, your average cost to educate a child in Littleton. Then you have the option, you decide as a district, what percentage of that DOE amount per pupil are you going to charge for tuition? It's usually around 20% to 40%. 20 to 40%. So if you're at the 20% or the 40%, you multiply that times your per pupil cost. That's what you're going to charge. You can also tack on to that another 3% of your base, of your average per pupil cost which we'll use towards capital improvements and operational costs to run that facility. But you don't receive anything in tuition and transportation. It's only for those 1,900 students which are being transported.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, good.
or
Thank you.
tuitioned.
Thank you for the
You're welcome.
clarification.
Any other questions? Senator Lang?
Is this a education trust fund expense or is this a general fund expense?
You know, I fought for years on that, and that's what you're going to have to look. What's the education trust fund? You look into adequacy and some of the indicators for the delivery of an adequate opportunity for an adequate education. CTE participation is one of those indicators, and there's several other references to CTE. But no, it's not part of adequacy. It comes from a separate appropriation here. So where you end up dealing with the education trust fund, that's been an issue which is in HB1 and HB2 that we just finished. There are certain components which were struck from the education trust fund where the monies would flow back into the general fund, where you can utilize those funds as you see fit.
Just to make sure I understood. So currently, it's a general fund expenditure, not part of
That's
the education
correct.
trust fund. Thank
That's correct.
I have a question. So the additional 2.3 something million is going to be
2.2.
part of the present budget.
It's not part of the present budget. That's how much it's being recommended that the budget be increased to support the costing of CTE.
Since this is not going to go in effect until July 25, because somebody's going to set up the formula, is there any chance that that formula may change in such a way that this is not going to be adequate?
The amount that we're asking for is enough to really do what you see the bottom line right here, very close. So it would be used to do what we're supposed to be doing right now, to fully reimburse these districts for the transportation costs. The transportation costs are not really $680,000. They're $6.8 million. So the 2.2 is making that difference up. Now, we may be able, with a formula which may be more effective in cost savings through using types of vehicles and costing it out the way the formula may be developed by the department. That needs to be seen. We do need, though, in order to put this in effect, that you talk to all the directors throughout the state. The information that needs to be gathered regarding the types of vehicles, the number of trips, the mileage, and all that, that is information which they don't have right now. That has to be gotten. So it's going to be a while. And then you have to go through rulemaking and all that. So with the 2025 date, it was projected that that's when this would be available and we could make that move in terms of costing it out, what the actual cost would be for CTE, transportation, and tuition.
Okay, thank you very much.
It's a complicated issue.
Anytime the formula is involved, it's complicated.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Anybody else who wants to chime in on House Bills 364? Seeing none, that ends the hearing on 364. Now we actually pretty much on time for the next bill. Another minute or so and we'll be all ready. Okay, it's 9:45. let's take up House Bill 492, and Representative Tanner is here to introduce the bill.
Thank you very much. We've got a big do going on over at the State House
Bet you
today.
do.
Uh, So for the record, my name is Linda Tanner. I represent Sullivan 5, the beautiful towns of Sunapee and Springfield. And this bill has been going around for a long time. I put it in last term, got killed, got actually tabled here in the Senate. Put it in again this year because these books that, and I should have brought one. I was kind of like hurrying around this morning, but the books that we get that are paperback, that are law books, are very important to us. In fact, yesterday we were doing 266, your 266 bill. Oh, thank you very much. This is the book. Okay. It's annotated, and it also has court cases in it. So not only does it have the law, but it has a lot of information about the law, when it was made, and that sort of thing. So these books, it started last term when they didn't show up. We were out for COVID, came back from COVID, no books. And because I'm just a school teacher, retired school teacher, not a lawyer, it was very important for me to have these books. I don't know how to go in depth. I don't have the software to go in depth that a lot of people that are in law do. But these, and I'd already had these books the other terms that I've been here. This is my 5th term. So I put in the bill. As I'm talking about the bill, all of a sudden a box of books arrive. Okay. So we had the books, went through everything. Then, like I said, it got tabled here in the Senate. So come back this year. I thought, well, I'll do it again. Put the bill in. You see it has a financial note to it. Okay. Came back from the Department of Education for $58,000 was the financial note. And if you look at it now, it says none, because we found out that they actually get them comped from the company that makes the law books that are in those racks over there. So that was kind of a surprise. And as I was talking about presenting my bill to the House, they showed up. So, you know, I told Representative Weiler, I thought there was like a book fairy around, that all of a sudden when I started speaking, it showed up. But so we have our books this year, but I want to make sure in statute that we have that available to us, because and available to you folks as well. I know you have staff that probably are very good. We have one staff, Gen 4, who has like several committees, and she's doing a wonderful job. In fact, 266, she did a side-by-side where she took the statutes as they are, and she took the bill that came down from the Senate, and we saw exactly the changes back and forth. I mean, just very great. And I'm sure she spent a lot of time. So anyway, so past the committee, there was one dissent, a brand new freshman who I'm sure would like to change his vote, went to the House floor, went through on a voice vote, consent calendar, was sent to finance, went through finance committee, unanimous, went to the general finance committee, they approved it. Now it's back to you. So I think it's probably gone through as much of a ringer as it could at this point. And I don't know what else I can say to tell you how important it is to us in the House Education to have this book. We all had them out yesterday, even though we had the side-by-side and Jen was there, we had them out because there were references to different places in the education law. And as you said, everything's complicated in education, all the formulas, all the career education. It's not an easy subject at all. So I'm just asking you to push it along its last little bit towards the governor's pen. And I'll take any questions anybody might have.
Questions from the committee members? I just have this deja vu all over again.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Because we went through this pretty thoroughly last time, and I think we were told that it would be too expensive, that the company who made the books did not make them anymore.
Right.
So there were all kinds of reasons for why we couldn't get them.
Right. And that kind of shocked me because I found out the same time you did from OLS. And so I spent the summer a couple of free days. It's a Thomson Reuters book, Reuters. And so I called them, went through like a whole bunch of layers of salesperson, whatever, the person for New Hampshire, and they had no idea. They weren't even sure that Reuters printed this book there. So, you know, I nosed around and got some help from a few people that had a little bit of an in, and found out that, yeah, the books, you know, there's no real problem with printing them. And then we got them, and with the $58,000 financial note from the Department of Education, talked to a few people. The department was actually charging their own staff $100 a book. And then all of a sudden it came out that they were comped. And it was like, you got to be kidding me, you know, kind of thing. But it's the different layers of how things go through. And I understand that to a certain level. Government,
You're saying they were complimentary by whom?
by the company.
The company
Thompson.
that prints them?
Yes, because they print all those
Right.
bound books,
Right.
and I mean they're in every room, and they must get
Right.
enough money with that to spring for, you know, they probably, I don't know, there's 20 books for our house, you know, how many books for you folks? And then actually the education part of the finance, some of those people said they'd like it too. So, and then the Department of Education gets it, this book, so
It's no question, it's a very big help.
it
You can
is,
look
it
up.
is a very help.
You can look it up, the RSAs online, but it's nice to have a book.
Well, and I look up an RSA in here, and you get, you know, I'm kind of a compulsive reader anyway, but then all of a sudden you see where it's cross-referenced, because the book is really, our laws are, in particularly from what I've seen, you know, are cross-referenced and contradict each other, and there's a lot of things, but reading the annotations and also being able to open to a page and seeing the surrounding laws as well, all of a sudden clicks in some questions, and hopefully at some point we'll get some things straightened out on the book, on the laws, actually, the statutes. I was telling somebody when I first came down, you know, green, wet behind the ears, I, you know, was bound and determined I was going to do something about education funding. And they sent me over to the DRA, and the guy sat me down, and I remember him going through, well, there's this part of the education funding, and this part, and this equation for here, and this equation for there, and I'm going, holy mackerel, I had no idea, you know, that it was as complicated as that, and that's what we're facing, trying to do the right thing. So,
Any other comments? Thank you very much.
thank you. I'm off to.
Good luck. Attorney Fenton, do you have anything to add on it? You want to turn on your mic? Thank you.
So this is the first I've heard that the books are comped. I know that my account at the office is charged for the books that I provide to my staff, and a book that I may or may not have provided to Senator Ward upon request. So we are billed for them. So if we're comped for them, that's great, but that's the first time hearing about them. I certainly understand the desire to have them. I always bring my copy, and I have a spare copy in my car, for which I'm also charged. So again, we don't oppose or support, only here to offer information. I was just surprised by the comp piece. And I recall the same testimony that you do, Senator Ward, which is last year, this idea that they simply wouldn't be printing the books anymore.
Right.
And I'm not sure what has happened to that argument. I've heard that previously. I haven't heard it recently. So there does seem to be some mystery surrounding the books.
Senator Prentice?
It is like deja vu. We're back here, but I think this, even if it was $58,000, I think it's a small request for for people who do so much work and important work, including, members of this committee. I use my laptop, but that's just me. A lot of people want to hold a book in their hand. That being said, I remember that testimony, and then the next thing you know, these books show up. So whatever it is, it was Dave Altunas, however you pronounce his last name, from OLS. Turns out it's not the case. So if they're showing up and they're being printed, I think we should support it, whether it's comped or we have to pay for it.
I would like to find out if it's really comp or not.
I
But it
think
would not be
his-
nice to have that in writing, because if your department is being billed for the books,
Oh,
I can just tell you my own experience personally. I think historically, when I first started at the department in 2015, we would provide the books to House Education, Senate Education. It was kind of our January ritual. But we were using our discretionary funds to do that. And then we had a pivot in terms of how we use those discretionary funds. And that is completely within the realm of the leadership to make that choice. And that is what started this discussion, is that one January, I just didn't show up with the books. And so, well, we had this practice, right? And how did we get away from this practice? And so if the department has the financing to do it, I understand what the fiscal note says, then we will certainly do it. But there has just been a lot of mystery around the books. I can just tell you, when they come in, my account for my unit that I work for is charged for each book that I take. And I try to make sure my staff each has a book, and we are billed for that. 100 and change per book.
per book is about 100.
110, something
Okay,
like that.
okay.
Yes. So if they were comped, that would be wonderful. I love that idea.
Absolutely. So the lang,
So just a couple, this is 114 according to the fiscal note per book.
Oh.
But I'll be honest with you, as last year I was chair of Ways of Fish and Game in the House, and all I did was ask the executive director for a copy for each member. We got it. I didn't need a law. I just had to ask that we had fairly new members. And so, again, I think the departments, I don't know that we need a law for this, but I think the departments do this anyway. If you ask, I know, talking to Senator Pearl, he gets a copy of the DES book for the Department of Environmental Services for his role. So the agencies are providing them upon request if you ask for them. So that'd be the only thing I'd say. And Madam Chair, I have to excuse myself because I got to be up in the House Ways and Means Committee in 3 minutes.
I think, again, when we had the discretionary funds, that's what we would do, was we would purchase the books and we would provide them. I do think that the education laws are different from other subcommittees. And the reason is, when I first started, this book was probably almost twice the size, and it had all sorts of laws that you wouldn't necessarily think would be applicable to education. For example, the law of homicide was in this book. And so we went through and we culled it out to say, what do we really need? So I believe that we've taken out any reference to, before I misspeak here, we've taken out the reference to homicide, but we still have 91A in here, right? 91A is the right to know law, as you are well aware. Do we need it in education? Well, it's certainly helpful to me as an attorney. Is it relevant perhaps to a school district? Sure, maybe. A parent? I don't know. I mean, again, there's so many aspects that affect education. And so when you look at this book and you decide what goes into it, it's challenging. It might not be as clear cut as Fish and Game or other entities, and that's not to be disparaging to any other committee, but I think there's just been a lot of mystique perhaps around this book in the history of it, but we're not in a position to hand them out. I wish we were, but that's the brief history of
Okay.
it.
Well, obviously, we have to look into this a little bit more. Senator Prentice?
I was just gonna say, by hook or by crook, we need to do it. It's great that some departments are just, giving the resource, are able to provide the resources. There was an interruption here which set off an alarm bell in the members. You really started in House Education, and it was bipartisan last year. I mean, even, Rick Ladd, Representative Ladd wanted to see they passed this on a bipartisan basis in
Right,
their committee and came and asked us for their help. So something changed, now something's back in order. I just want to make sure they get the books, whether we have to pass a law to do it or have some type of, policy that can be enforced. Good.
Now, I'd like to check into mostly if this are given complimentary, I'd sure like to know about that. But
Yeah.
I like to know it absolutely for sure. But I do think that somebody, whether it's our department, the Department of Education, or our department right here in the State House, check and see, do we have money to get these kinds of things? But I was just thinking, I'm on transportation. I have not got the transportation book. I've gotten in the past, but I have not gotten it this year. So something is changing and we don't know about it, but exactly what it is. So, well, thank you very much. Attorney
I
Fenton.
don't know if I
We'll see what we can
made
do.
it clear as mud, but I'm happy to get any additional information that I'm able to get. through the
Well, if you
department.
find out before we do, if they're actually complimentary,
I-
then you shouldn't have a bill.
That would be great.
Right. So, anybody else who wants to talk on this particular bill? HB 4, whatever it is, 492. Seeing none, that ends the hearing. Now I'm going to wait for
Let's get them both.
the two people who are out testifying before we go into executive session.
Thank you.
I would say definitely we can take a recess of 20
Grand.
minutes,
Sounds great.
okay? So there'll be a recess of 20 minutes, at which point we'll go into executive session.
We haven't.
I have 10:20 and we're going into executive session. Can I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor of executive session?
Aye.
Aye. The first bill we're going to take a look at is HB 35. That has to do with the bill wanting to have the eating disorder hotline on the student ID. Senator Prentice?
So we're in exec session, correct?
We're in executive session. yes.
Beautiful. So, I'd like to make a motion OTP.
Second.
Okay.
OTP for 35.
I'm happy to speak to my motion. I believe that we, not only that day, but since that day, have heard compelling testimony, and public comment on why, this would be a critical resource in an easy to access location for students. I don't, and I've also spent some time looking at and talking about the new suicide prevention hotline, which I know we referred, like, is that talked about, like, is that where we should be sending the youth that are struggling in this area? And that they're not a triage line for, they're not a crisis hotline for everything. They are for suicide prevention, and it should be, my place is that we shouldn't even get to that point with these children, the youth. They should have a way to work and resolve this issue, and we should, through the support that's provided by this national hotline before it gets there. So that's why I'm making the motion of OTP, and I appreciate the second, and that's that. That's what I have to say for now.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yeah.
Can I, Senator Gendro?
So a couple things, I am in favor of it. I am. I guess my concern is this, that usually an eating disorder is a symptom of a much, what's the word I'm looking for? It's only a symptom. Yeah, it's an underlying issue. I am in support of it. I believe it's, at least it's a start to be able to help. The other thing is, where do we stop? Do we then, add all these hotlines to the student ID cards where they have to carry them around in a wheelbarrow by their senior year? I'm concerned about, we've got the suicide hotline on there, and now we'll have the national eating disorder hotline on there. Are we really getting to the root of the issue? But all that being said, I am supportive of this.
Thank you. If I may?
Yes, sure.
I appreciate your comments, Senator Gendro, and I think that, there's this, the former fire chief in Berlin, New Hampshire, Paul Fortier, who has long since retired, not once, many times to say to me, the cow's already out of the barn. And when we put the first national hotline number on there, we opened the door for the future of these discussions, not knowing what that might hold. So this, so I hear you on that, and I thought a lot about it, but cow's out of the barn. So hopefully we won't need to use many of these, because we'll be working to address this, especially through some of the mental health education that will now be provided in the schools as part of their curriculum. So thank you.
I had heard somebody wanted not just the public schools, but non-public schools included in this thing. And I don't know if we can ask non-public schools to add this to their ID cards. Whether we should just stick with the,
I think we have to stick with this. I think they're private business. I don't think we can.
that's sort of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And Senator Ward, I would just say I'd hope that they would follow the lead of the public school system and say, you know what, this is a great idea. This is good what's happening with suicide prevention. We're going to follow along with this too. So this is a case where on the public side, we're taking the lead.
No, I think that's, so I have an OTP and I have a second. Senator Lang?
So again, I was the one that brought up the conversation around 988, instead of making this list of numbers that are going to slowly be added, like to the point of the cows out of the barn. We can still close the barn door though. right? Doesn't mean we leave it open, leave it kicked open for everybody else who wants to bring a number and attach it to a student ID card. And I think the more, in all honesty, I think the more we put on the back of a student ID, the less a student's going to actually look at it. And the fact is that having a simple single number, that 988 number, which is not only suicide, it's substance abuse, it can be eating disorder, it's a mental health hotline. To Senator Gendero's point is that I also agree that I think that an eating disorder is a symptom to an underlying mental health issue that's been unresolved, that needs it. So I'm concerned about the idea we're putting in the suicide hotline is manned by mental health professionals, which is on the back of the card, but we've heard that this hotline is manned by volunteers who are trained by a mental health provider, but not actually mental health providers themselves. So I'm a little concerned about this. I'd rather close the barn door, and I'd remove the suicide hotline to say, some sort of line that says if you're having issues in the area of mental health or substance abuse or eating disorders, and call this number for assistance. And put that one number on there. And just like we use 911, we don't have a separate fire department and police department phone number. You have an emergency, you call one number. I think that's a more appropriate way to go, myself.
I'm very sympathetic to the eating disorders thing. I do totally agree with both Senator Langs and Gendro. That is an underlying problem usually. And I think with body image, particularly for women. And I think that has to do with the TV, ads, papers, magazines, that all tell you that you need to change whatever you are. Either you're too fat, too skinny, hair is not long enough, or you're not the right weight, or you can't fit into the right clothes. There's always something that puts women in particular into the situation that I am not good the way I am. I have to do something else. And I think that's part of it. But I've certainly known a number of young people with eating disorders, and they're aware of it, and they still sort of struggle, but the logic has taken over, and they understand what they need to do. So, do we need another number? But I think for now, I would go with OTP and see how it goes, and maybe tweak it later on in the future. That's sort of my reaction to it. So we have an OTP and has been seconded. Do we need more discussion on it? Who votes OTP on this bill?
I do.
So we have 5. You want to put it on consent, or does anybody want to talk about it?
Consent.
Consent?
Consent.
You have the consent and the second. Any further discussion on the consent? Who is in favor of consent?
Aye.
That's 5-0. You want to take it out, Senator Prentice? Okay. Great. Okay, how about 129? Yes,
Motion and expedient to legislate, and I'd be happy to speak to that if I get a second.
absolutely.
Second.
Go ahead.
I think we should leave this the way it is. It currently is. We heard testimony to that effect, and although I appreciated the work of the House on this and Representative Edwards, I do think that if, a discipline issue is different than this issue, which has been well proven to keep young women, young women out of the classroom, out of sporting events. It is a barrier that we need to make sure we keep to the side. I mean, this was passed, and I just think we need to stop. We need to stop this trying to edge this backwards and move forward and support young women and and their dignity so that they can be in school, they can play sports, they can be with everybody else when this presents a serious barrier. I mean, I went back and I looked at the the legislation. It goes from 2019, 2020. And certainly the prime sponsor is my predecessor, the wonderful Senator Hennessy. But I went back and read through that testimony, and I really feel like we're in a good place. So I don't want to tweak it. That's my position. Thank you.
I agree with you, man. I was reading the hearing report, and I said the present bill is not as favorable as the old bill. was.
Exactly.
So I don't really understand why they wanted to do something different. Yes, Senator Lang?
So again, I think it was a matter of returning local control back to the local school to be able to manage the situation in a manner that's consistent with that school system without setting a mandate down to the school system. So there are school districts that are having disciplinary problems, and what are we doing with them? Are we just going to completely ignore them if they're getting trashed and the school has no other choice because the law's prohibitive? It tells them what they must do. This would allow that school district to adapt and adjust based on the conditions of the school that's going on in that local school. So I'm in support of the bill because it doesn't stop them from putting it in the bathroom. It just allows them an option. If they're having a problem, they don't have to.
Yes, Senator Prentice?
Thank you, Senator Ward. And so Senator Lang, we only heard from one school district. And when I asked Representative Edwards, he was unable, respectfully, there were no other examples. And I also think that there's nothing right now that if school districts are having difficulty with this, that they can't do within the resources that their own world to fix this. We don't say how you need to put them, whether, it says just, we don't require dispensers, none of those things, just make products available in the privacy of the bathroom, for young women who are menstruating. So if there's a problem with how they're being used, that school district needs to deal with that. And honestly, if I heard compelling evidence, even though, I may have worked to tweak what Representative Edwards brought forward, but I don't feel that we need to do that. I think we just have to stick with what we have. And maybe we work with the school administrators and the school board associations, and even, those that represent the teachers to try to get this into line if it is offline, but I didn't hear that testimony. And I'm a huge fan of local control.
Do you have an RTL and a second on it? Any further discussion on 129? Seeing none, how do you vote? ITL?
I vote in favor of ITL.
Vote in favor of ITL, so.
ITL? Senator Lang, you say no?
Yes.
So it's 4-1.
But I'd love to try to break a rule for the Senate if we can try.
The what?
I'll move consent. I'm not going to fight it on the Senate floor, but I'll happy to take it off the regular calendar, even though it's a 4-1. We can push Jeb with a 5-0 vote for consent, and I'm okay with that.
So I have ITL 4-1.
Yep.
Okay. To take it up on the floor, and you will speak to it.
No, I will.
he doesn't.
I don't want to speak. That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to fight it on the House.
Can you
on
move
the Senate
consent
floor.
We could
I can
on
move.
consent.
I don't know. The question, I asked
No,
Jeb
you
this
can't.
question. He went, if it's a 5-0 consent vote, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
So
you
we can
can't
try
have
it if we
4-1
want.
And have it on consent.
All right, that's fine.
In the House you can, but I don't know if in the Senate you can.
I have never heard of it. It has to be pretty much unanimous 5-1.
All right, that's fine. That's why I said I wanted to buck the trend, but that's okay.
So if it's 4-1, and we'll
usually
take
me.
it out on the floor.
It's the spice of life, Senator Lang.
Okay? The Senator Lang will be the take it out on the floor. Thank you. That's 129.
No, I'm not going to speak to it at all.
I'll speak to it. Ruth.
You take it out.
Senator Gendro, you'll take it out?
I'll take it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you get that, Pete?
Okay. 275. Schools approved for a school tuition program by a school board. What did you say?
Discussion, just a quick
First,
conversation.
I want to have the votes on the bill, and then we'll have the discussion.
So we have an amendment to it, so I guess I move OTP first.
I'll second.
Do I have a second for that?
And then
we
I'll
can
move,
have the discussion.
And then I'd move amendment number 1348S, and I'll speak to the amendment. Oh, hold on. Make sure I got the most current amendment.
House report on it, to understand what's going on.
So the amendment stated 411, and the number's 1348, and it was given out last week.
Didn't end up in my.
So I'll read the addition to the bill. And this revolved around the idea of an anchor school and making sure that parents, it would still allow parents, if they chose to tuition their kids to do the tuition program of a school district to another school that was more expensive, and it would allow the parents to pay the differential, but only if, and what it says, to enroll a child in a tuition school approved by the local school board whose tuition cost is above the district's established tuition cost per the pupil as determined and approved by the board, the local board may require a parent to pay the tuition cost difference as long as at least one option is a public school designated as an anchor school and does not require additional tuitional payments for the parent. So that was the discussion we had, that we wanted to make sure that we have no problem with if a school board wants to agree to a tuition that's greater than, the parent would be responsible for the differential, but there had to be a public school choice option that the parent had to pay nothing to. And that's what this amendment does.
So did you send it out? Yes. Could you send it to my private email? I don't want to get into the legislative email, report@myfairpoint.net. Then I can take a look at it. What was the number of the amendment?
1148S. I mean, it's a 1348S.
13?
Yeah.
13 what?
48S.
1348. And that's Lang's amendment.
So again, this amendment was to address the concerns that were talked about in the committee around having
An anchor
a
school.
public school choice that had no expense to a parent. And I added that to the bill as requested.
I think the other thing too, the local board may require,
Correct.
and I think that's critical, not
Shall.
shall, yeah.
So, Senator Lang, I want to clarify some things. So with your amendment, you're saying that now there is an anchor school option, and that the parent has that option of the anchor school so that they don't have to pay the higher tuition.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's a public school, not a private. It has to be a public school choice that has no parental cost. Did you want to read it, Sue?
Anyway,
Oh,
I'm getting
look,
that.
here, I had,
Okay.
I got the Post notes,
Oh.
minority report, because I was trying to understand what happened, before I came over here. No, I got the amendment right here, it satisfies the concerns that were brought up, and it satisfies.
Of anchor school.
Oh,
Do you have it written down there?
Want a copy of it?
I'd
oh,
like
here,
to-
do you
I'd
want
like-
this?
I'd
Here,
just like to read it.
Oh, you want? Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
bolded sentence.
So Senator Ward is reading through this for, Senator Lang, thank you for preparing this amendment. It does address the anchor school concern, which I came in late to this, but I remember the gentleman from Bow was speaking about that. So
Right.
number one, and the part about the public school, the local board may require a parent to pay the tuition cost difference as long as at least one option is a public school designated, and it touches on the anchor school. So I am good with this now. Approved by the.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
So that was the,
So we have an OTP. Now we have to vote on the amendment. Do I have a vote on the amendment?
Aye.
All those in favor
Aye.
for the
Aye.
amendment?
Amendment 1348,
1348.
correct. All right, good.
And then we vote for the underlying bill with the
As
amendments.
amended.
And we have a,
We have an OTP motion on the floor, so.
yeah, we have OTP motion on that. Right. Any further discussion on the
Nope.
bill with the amendment?
Thank you, Senator Lang, for that amendment.
Yes, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Consent?
Move consent. All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
That's 5-0.
Be happy to take it out. Be happy to take it out while it's on consent.
Okay, Senator Lang will take this out.
Makes this-
What do we have now? 349. That is the village district, and you should all have gotten the latest amendment from Senator Innes. We have
That
two of them,
is-
and the latest one addresses a little bit more specific how this thing is going to be done. That is
It's Amendment 1398.
1398.
Came from,
Yeah, but we have the other one, his tweaked, so 1366. I don't think we need to do the first one.
So 1398.
98, right. So that's the amendment that we have to vote on. Well, here's the, yes. So the changes was on page 3, line 18, and the 8. Upon adoption of this act by all 3 towns at the 2024 annual school district meetings. Strike out district meetings and just place it with meeting. So the sentence then will read, upon adoption of this act by all 3 towns at the 2024 annual school meeting. And on page 3 on line 27, so add a new sentence to conclude 8. Likewise, upon the passage of the act, the towns of Bridgewater, Hebron, and Groton shall not be liable for subsequent borrowing by the newfound area school district unless they fail to adopt this act at the 2024 meeting. Those are the major tweaks to 1398.
So Madam Chair, right? So again, I think this addressed the concerns about it taking a 4-year process. It
Yes.
expedites it, makes it cleaner so that the district that they're withdrawing from knows what's going on, doesn't have to wait 4 years for pending. And it gives a time period where they're still members of the cooperative school district until they finally withdraw. But while in that period, it dealt with the, for lack of a phrase, I'll say legislative concerns of you'd have people who are leaving the school district and have voted to leave the school district, but they're still voting on financial issues for the remaining towns. And so this amendment takes out their voting rights, saying you can't vote on the financial issues because you're not going to be here in a year. So you have no right to say what we're going to do next year, or the year after, or bonding or those kind of things.
So the 4 years is essentially cut down to 2. Yes, Senator Prentice?
I just wanted to add that although I heard limited opposition to the first version of this, then there was this, former Representative Gordon's amendment, and then Senator Innes's, which supersedes that. Now the people that I'd heard from that were, and again, it was a small group that were opposed to it, are now in favor, because the process issue has been hammered out. So
So
that's
Madam
all.
Chair, I move OTP.
Right, I have an OTP on the amendment,
On the bill first.
on
yeah.
the, on the bill, on the bill.
Yep.
Okay.
And then I move amendment number 1398.
Do I have a second on the bill?
Yeah, Senator Jennifer second on the, all right. And
And then
Now
I
we
move
have the
amendment
amendments.
1398.
I'll second,
13,
may I? Just 'cause
Yeah.
Groton is in my district, so I'd like to
So I have an OTP on the amendment, 1398. Second? Do we have a second?
Sue seconded.
Yeah.
I did. I seconded the
Okay,
amendment.
Great. Any further discussion on it? It's good. Now we have the underlying bill. We have a motion to OTP and the second. Now we have to vote on the underlying bill with the amendment.
We vote on the amendment yet?
So how do you vote?
So TPA.
Aye.
We've,
I don't think we voted on the amendment yet.
We did.
Did we?
We just did.
He's saying no, I'm saying no.
I know we got a second for it.
We had a second, we just never
Let's-
actually.
Let's vote on the amendment 1398, and I had an auto pass.
Aye.
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 And now we're voting on the underlying bill with the amendment.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. So that's
Move consent.
5-0. So many papers. All those in favor? We have
Aye.
now 5-0 on the bill here.
So you want to take it out?
I'd love to take it out. Yes, thank you.
So consent is 5-0 and Prentice will take it out.
Prentice will take it out.
Okay.
Just put the amendment in this file. All right.
I actually have some extra copies for the public of this amendment.
If you want to pass it over, I can put it here in case anyone wants to pick it up. Or Peter, no, it's good to get out of the chair. I'm getting my thing saying, get up, it's an hour.
Mhm. So that's.
Oh, we
taken
have
care of.
No, 536 is the last one, right?
Yeah. Oh, 572.
536.
Madam Chair, if I may. I'm going to move OTP, and I have an amendment to the bill.
That's the Lang Pearl. Do you have an addition?
Hold on,
What number
pull
is
this
it?
back up.
What number is on the amendment?
Do we have a second on the OTP?
Oh, second. Sorry.
So the amendment number is, well, it's 1225.
Okay.
So this is the same that we talked about last week?
Correct. So if I may, on the amendment, Madam Chair, again, this was the amendment that put in the requirement for a time action or timeline for action on an offer made by a charter school to a public school for unused property.
Yes. Now, I heard a comment by Representative Tanner that she felt that it should be a fair market price.
And I guess I was going to ask you how to go about that. I'm okay with, if we pass the amendment, do a committee amendment that just
You can
adds the
just do
word
a
market in there.
Committee amendment.
Yeah. So we can add on line 19, add the word fair market price.
Should it also say it
And on line 21 as
21,
well, where it
yeah.
says fair lease price, but fair market lease price.
Yeah.
What's that? 21, yeah.
I will.
So it'll say fair market price and fair market lease price.
That's the committee amendment. So with that, we'll have a
So are
vote.
we voting on an amendment to an amendment?
No, the committee amendment, just adding the market price to the 1225. There will be the change in the word, adding the word will be a committee amendment. Now we have to vote on the amendment 1225.
I'll speak to the amendment. I think Senator Lang and I have gone back and forth on this quite a bit. My stance is that it is taking all the control away from the public school, and it's I just don't think it's right that we're not giving the public school an option to determine how to sell their property. And I voiced my concerns earlier.
Yeah, you have.
Yep.
And I heard you last time. And it says, if the offering school district has not received an offer to purchase or lease an unused facility from a party other than an approved charter public school operating in the state. If they have received no offers to buy, lease, or do anything with it, but you have this charter school sitting there, what else would you like to do?
If it comes down to time, I think, nothing happens overnight. Nothing might happen in 60 days, however. But that last sentence in line 20, it's taking away all power from that school. So they are. It's like if I were to go to sell my house, and I didn't like the price that was offered, I lose all control, and I have to accept or reject their price now, no matter what. I just don't see how that's fair. It almost seems anti-capitalism to me. And it sounds like government interfering with that sale.
The only thing I'd remind you, it's a public school going to a public school.
If you have a third party coming in there, and like you often do when you have wanted to sell something of that magnitude, and they come up with a fair market price. And if the charter school is willing to pay it, or they may very well say, no, I don't want to buy it at that price. Then I think in the case that we heard, they had been waiting for what, how many months?
In the case of the original reason for the underlying bill was over 7.5 months, they were waiting with no action whatsoever
Right.
by the school board. And again, I just say, Madam Chair, is that the obligation is on the school board first has control whether they put it on the market or not, whether they're going to choose to sell that property or not. And that's the first action. Again, it's a fair market price. And I don't know why a school or any public entity should be able to say, no, we want more than the fair market price. So we're going to hold on to it and decline the offer. So there already being offered a fair market price by an independent analysis. And the only one that really matters is whether the receiving school can afford the fair market price. And that's why they get the right of first refusal. But again, we're going back and forth. So
We are.
Senator Prentice?
If timing is the issue, and this is what I said last week, if timing is the issue, then timing is what we should address. And I am sympathetic to this going, if you make an offer and it's, 7.5 months, 60 days, 7.5 months, it's too long to wait. So you say, look, this is the time period that you have to do this in. And if you can't do it in that, you notify and you agree on an extension. I think not responding or not taking any action is not appropriate. So that's the issue. I'm happy to go there. My concern is that we're taking what is a timing issue and then further getting into this whole, what will happen with what will happen with local property. And say it's public school going to public schools. I explained my concern on this bill, not this bill, but the previous version of it. I felt like we got into telling communities what they'll do with their property rather than say, if you want to repurpose a public school to be housing, then you can repurpose it to do housing. And I used Lebanon as an example. Some of it we did, but some of it went to a public charter school. But it was left up to the locals to make that decision. So if the timing is the issue, then let's just deal with the timing. And that's my opinion. All right.
Well, do you want to have another amendment with exactly the way you want it?
Well, I think Senator Lang has brought forward an amendment that we either have to vote up or down because now we have sorry, Senator, what am I okay to? Sorry, I sometimes just jump ahead.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion before us, correct?
Yep.
And it was moved and seconded. So we have to up or down it. And if it doesn't pass, then I'll be happy to offer another amendment. If not, then it is what it is.
So you're not okay with the amendment?
No, no, I'm not. We talked about it. I mean, I'd be happy to strike some verbiage out of this amendment as well, just the accept or reject for the chartered schools, if Senator Lang was amendable to that, or we can move forward on this amendment.
Just back up 1 second. So we're talking about on line 19, striking to agree or to reject, and on line 20, end of line 21 for the offering charter school to accept or reject.
I
So
think-
is that your language? Is that, and I guess I just don't know how that stops the situation that occurred from happening. If again, what would be the argument if a fair market price is established by an independent third-party mediator? What would be the argument for a school to turn down the fair market price?
Well, I think it gives them grounds. I think it gives that charter public school grounds to say, hey, we went through the process. We got a fair market value. We had an independent mediator come in and establish a fair price. Then they have a leg to stand on saying, okay, the time went through, that went through. What is the issue now? And whether that leads to future legislation, a lawsuit, whatever, but we can't give all that power to that purchaser versus that local control being taken away.
What language would you suggest?
I would suggest in line 19, striking out after fair price. And striking out for the offering charter public school to agree or reject.
You want that half sentence taken out?
I would take that out, and I would take out the situation to the charter school made an offer to lease the property. The appraisal gathered by the mayor shall determine a fair price. And in line 21, after fair lease price, again, strike out for the offering chartered public school to accept or reject. So in both times, strike out for the offering chartered public school to accept or reject.
So the appraised value shall determine a fair market price. In situation where the charter school made an offer to lease the property, the appraisals gathered by the mediator shall determine a fair market lease price.
Correct.
So you don't, okay, for whom?
For that chartered public school,
But you
or
want
for
that-
whoever.
You wanted to have that taken out.
Correct. Or you could add in for the public chartered school, but not the agree to or reject. That's the issue I have with
Okay,
it.
but the bill deals with the charter schools' problem with sometimes getting an
I have to
unused
go.
building.
And unfortunately, I have an 11 o'clock, so I have to.
Okay, we can continue to come this.
Yeah, so I think we have to
discussion.
vote on this, yes or no. I apologize.
We can hold off on this.
Okay.
We can hold off it until you come back. Okay? So withdraw the motion for the amendment. And we'll continue the discussion on 5:36 when Senator Fenton
Thank you, guys.
returns.
And then Senator Lang can reintroduce it and the discussion can continue. Is that
Yeah, I'll withdraw my motions and we can just take it back up as another exec session.
good? I just wanted to make sure
Okay.
we were
So
giving it the airtime.
are you just
Okay.
going to make a quick presentation?
I hope so.
Okay,
I'm going to introduce it now.
okay, thank you.
Bounce out.
We'll be in recess for 10 minutes because we can't really vote on the others without everybody here.
Are we required to wear this?
No.
I don't know why it's upside down because this thing is way down here instead of up there.
You want to shut your mic. Oh, hey.
Working on House Bill, Michelle will know, 536. And we are discussing the amendment. 1225.
Madam Chair, we'll start over again. I move OTP on the original bill.
Did you just say?
I said we'll start over again. I'll move OTP on the original bill.
OTP on
I'll
the-
second it.
OTP, and we have a second.
And then I'll move OTP on amendment
Wait, we
12.
have to all vote on the.
Oh, sorry. Well, not yet. It's, you have a motion and then,
We have a motion and a second on the amendment.
yep.
All those in favor?
Well, I moved the bill first and it was seconded. Now I move the amendment. That's what I
Okay.
was doing now.
I thought we had already moved. the
No,
bill.
no.
Moved the bill, and now we're discussing the amendment.
Okay.
Then will be the bill with the amendment, which
Okay.
will be the final.
So I move,
Okay, so any further discussion on the amendment? Yes.
I'll be much better about, I should get out my cards, be much better about pressing my microphone. So again, I go back to, if this is a matter of timing, then the language about timing, and we could potentially even, take the language about timing and say you either get the offer or you have an agreement for an extension that does not pass a certain number of days. I do believe that the other language is not, it moves away from the initial, really, if this is the problem with timing, then let's address the timing. It sounded like Senator Fenton and Senator Lang may have been trying to work on some joint language to tweak the rest of it, that I'd be open to continuing to work on that if that would help Senator Lang get what he needs and bring comfort with Senator Fenton, but I just live with the underlying 60 days. All right, that's it for me.
Senator Lang, do you want to respond to that?
again, we think we've hashed this and hashed this and hashed this. I don't see any reasonable cause for a school district to not accept the fair market value, and it's just whether or not the charter school can afford the fair market value, so it should have the choice of whether or not it can make it or not. So I think we've hashed it all about. Ready to vote?
So are you ready to vote on the amendment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No? No. 3-2 on the amendment. Okay, the bill 536 with the amendment.
Madam Chair, if I may. So we had some discussion about adding just 2 words to the bill now
The
as
committee
amended.
amendment, Yeah.
It's the word market under fair market price and fair market lease price. So I'd ask as a committee amendment, we adopt those addition of those 2 words to the bill as amended.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'll second it.
Okay, second it.
No.
Adding, you don't want the market?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
That doesn't work.
Apologies.
So the commitment members would be to add market, fair market on line 819 and 21.
Correct.
All those in favor of that? Of the
Aye.
commitment amendment? Aye. So we have the commitment amendment with 5-0, and we have the 1225 with 3-0, and then we have the underlying bill. We have an OTP on the underlying bill. And a second. Any further discussion on the bill?
So this is voting on the bill as amended.
As amended.
Aye.
Aye.
So 3 ayes, Senator Fenton, 3, it's okay. So it's 3-2.
And I'll take it out, Madam Chair, even if it isn't on the consent calendar.
Okay, that finishes 536. The last one we have is 572, relative to eligibility for free school lunches. Have a motion on the bill?
I move re-refer.
I'll second it.
I have a motion of re-refer. Any discussion on it?
I'm not opposed to the re-refer. I think there's a lot of merit in the bill. There's a lot of things we have to work out in the bill, money and all that. I was thinking also though, this is a finance bill. It's gonna go to finance, let them kind of work out the kinks potentially.
Senator Prentice?
I'm in favor of a re-refer. I mean, should we try to work out some of the interplay here between, I have like 3 different sets of costs, and then there, even though Medicaid direct certification is different, how that interplays with this discussion. I mean, I think there's a number of, I'd like to hash out some of the policy pieces and then put it in a better position to go to finance. And it is my hope that we will be able to get it there because, you know, we heard compelling testimony about, you know, we all know that hungry children, and we have hungry children in New Hampshire. And the one place that many children can count on at least one meal a day is in school. So what we have to do to get ourselves there and make this work, I think should be the priority. So I hear you, Senator Fenton. Let's hold, fix, and the policy side, and then send it down.
So you're with
I'm-
re-refer?
I'm with re-refer.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with re-refer. Absolutely.
Okay. Any further discussion of re-refer? Ready to vote? All those in favor of re-refer?
Aye.
Aye. That's 5-0.
Move consent?
Second.
All those in favor of consent?
Aye.
Aye. It's 5-0.
I'll take it up.
Going to be busy. Okay, Senator Lang will take it up.
Okay.
That finishes the bills that we got.
Sorry again, guys, for making you all wait. I apologize.
So thank you all for coming and for participating. Now we don't have to come back at 1. So
I want to go, I spoke up this during our break. I really appreciated having the list ahead of time. I worked through, I read the email, pulled out the bills, and got myself ready, as you could see, to go. I didn't have to fish around for too many details because they were ready. Thank you,
Good.
Senator Ward. I
we'll
love
do
it.
that. No problem. Aye.
Aye.